Peace and blessings. Shalom. Welcome to Universal God Message of Peace. I'm Lale Tunser. This is Rabbi Lee Wiseman. And today the topic for discussion is riding the beast. How do we control our anger? So Rabbi Wiseman's going to talk about this today, and I'll ask some questions afterwards. Over to you, Rabbi Wiseman.
Okay. As usual, I'm going to start with the story. So I use this story a lot for a lot of things, but I use it for this one also. So once upon a time, there was a lady who had a son, and he ate too much sugar. He was really into the sugar. He was constantly like dipping his hand in the sugar bowl, and he was downing the sugar, and she didn't know what to do. And she tried everything with this kid, and he wouldn't listen to her. And they were Indian. They lived in India, and it was during the time of Gandhi. And kid really respected Gandhi. He was like, he had this, every time he saw Gandhi's picture, he was like, so she's like, okay, I'm gonna go to Gandhi. I'm gonna bring the boy there, and Gandhi will tell him to stop eating so much sugar. So she takes the kid, and they have to go on a long train ride, and then the long train ride was another bus ride, and then after the bus ride, there's an ox cart, and after the ox cart, there's a donkey, and finally they get to the Gandhi ashram, they get to where Gandhi lives, and they have to wait, and finally they get an audience with the great Mahatma Gandhi himself. And she explained, she said, "This is my child. He respects you so much, and he eats sugar all day long." He says, "He eats sugar." I says, "Please tell him to stop eating sugar. Please." And Gandhi says, "Come back in 1 month." So she thinks, okay, maybe he did some magic, something, maybe. So she goes home, she travels back with the donkey and the ox cart and the bus and the train, and she finally goes home. She waits a month, and the kid doesn't change. The kid is scooping the sugar, eating the sugar, scooping the sugar, eating the sugar. Finally, she goes back. She takes the train, she takes the bus, she takes the ox cart, she takes the donkey, and finally she comes to the ashram and she waits for her audience with the great Mahatma Gandhi. And she comes and she brings the child in front. That Mahatma Gandhi immediately recognized the child, and he says to the child, "Don't eat so much sugar." And the mother says, "I don't understand." He says, "I came here a month ago, okay? And I took a train, I took a bus, I took an ox cart, I took a donkey, and I came here, and I
Mhm.
asked you to say the same thing. And now you said why?" He says, "Because a month ago I was still eating sugar." So they're still eating sugar. So the reason why I tell you that story is because I'm going to tell you that anger is difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for Dr. Tunzer up there. Okay. This is just a difficult topic. And so I am approaching you as a hypocrite. Okay. As a person who is very much struggling with this topic. It is always a struggle, and I can't promise you that you won't struggle with it, because I struggle with it. Lale struggles with it. Everybody I know struggles with it. I've never met anybody who doesn't. But let's consider a few possibilities of things that might help. First of all, I think it's important to remember that whenever we're talking about a human quality, we have to remember that it has good potentials and negative potentials. The energy of anger, right, also has positive qualities, right? There are times when we need to have anger, right? There's a kind of righteous anger that's important for the world. The world needs people who are able to stand up and to stand up in situations of oppression, situations where there's a kind of harshness that's needed. Sometimes that's necessary, and so we shouldn't always think of anger as being, we should acknowledge that there's a positive quality um, to anger. Um, I don't think people, very often people talk about repressing anger, right? What do? We just don't express it, right? And that is advice and if we were to kind of make a survey of spiritual literature,
Mm,
and psychological literature, I would say that there's a huge emphasis on that, right? There's an emphasis on not expressing anger. It's important not to express it, and somehow or another, if you don't express it, it's going to go away. Well, that does not always work. And I would say mostly it doesn't work. Very often, if a person represses anger, the anger simmers inside and it becomes like an abscess, right? It just gets worse and worse and worse until finally it bursts and then it's really nasty. So it's not it, the repression the repression route is not necessarily a good one. Learning how to express your real feelings um, is one way of dealing with anger.
mm,
Very often when we're angry, it's because we're having feelings that we don't quite know what to do with. We don't know exactly how to manage them. We may not even be able to identify them. We're not even sure why we're so upset because it happens so quickly. We know that, anger is not just a psychological phenomenon. It's also a physiological phenomenon, right? That your body goes through all sorts of changes. You start pumping adrenaline. Your prefrontal cortex, right? So that's this frontal part of your brain that deals with rationality goes offline. Okay, so you can kind of imagine if you could do a brain scan and look at your brain, all of a sudden this frontal part of your brain goes dark, so you turn into basically an alligator. Okay. So you are now like an alligator. Okay. Now,
mm,
if two people are angry, what you have two alligators that are talking to each other. Okay. That probably won't work out well because what they'll do is they'll attack each other. They get themselves in a death roll and they'll try to death roll each other, but it's not going to be productive. So
mm,
one of the first things that one can do is to try to get your brain working again. That's the first thing, right? Now, to do that, okay, so imagine, just so you know, if you had a little oximeter, okay, if you had a little oximeter, okay, and you put it on your finger, and I suggest that everybody get themselves an oximeter. If I could, I would wear one all the time. All right, you get a little oximeter and you put it in your finger. And if your heart rate goes above 90, okay, which will happen when you get angry, chances are that you have turned into an alligator. And at that point, you should stop talking, okay? You should stop talking, okay? Because it's alligator talk. So stop talking, okay? Even if you don't have the oximeter, when your face gets red, okay, when you start feeling the physiological changes of anger, your face is getting red, right? Your eyes are squinting, your muscles are tightening, right? All those things are happening to you. When you feel that, okay, take a breath and wait. Wait. Don't talk. Wait. If you want to spend a moment watching your breath, go away, read a magazine, read something, do something that's going to distract you and wait, then come back and address the problem once your brain actually returns. Once your mind actually returns. Delay is your first and best weapon when it comes to dealing with anger, is to just get out of the situation long enough to be able to let your brain, come back, to get the prefrontal cortex back online, okay, so that you're going to be able to respond in some kind of rational way. Um, and I think that's the first level, much better than repressing it. Okay. If you just try to press it down, if you stay in the situation and you try to press it down, chances are it's going to pop up, and you're going to be a really, really angry alligator, and that's not a good thing.
Mm.
So I
It's
think
really
that's my first piece of advice. What do you think of that first piece of advice, Miss?
No, I think that's really, really good advice. But I think sometimes, though, people get into like a fight or flight mode. So let's say if you feel threatened by somebody else and you've got no bit where to run away to. Let's say you can feel yourself turning into an alligator, but you think actually I don't want to say anything, so I'm going to stop talking, but I'm going to run away. And so you try to escape. But what happens if you've got nowhere to escape? Then you're sort of trapped in a corner. And if you feel like threatened, should you defend yourself? And in that case, is that anger sort of okay? Because you need that to fuel you up and defend yourself from getting hurt. What do you think about that? So that's one question. Secondly, um, what was the other thing? I forgot the other point I was going to make. But yeah, so that's the question I have. What do you do in that situation? Um, can you, I know because I've been there myself and it's not a nice place to be. And as you said, when your heart rate goes up and you can't breathe and you feel like a bit panicky and afraid and you're feeling threatened, sometimes you lose that control over yourself.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then you fight back because you've got nowhere to escape.
Right.
So what isn't
Well,
that okay to do that?
first of all, there's no commandment to be a doormat.
Mm,
Okay, there's no reason we shouldn't be a doormat. We shouldn't let people, we should defend ourselves. Um, it I think sometimes it's a question of how we defend ourselves, right?
that's yeah, yeah.
Because a lot of times, because for example, okay, for example, um, somebody comes at me, somebody comes at me, and anybody who's watched my social media will know that I get all sorts of stuff like this all the time. People yell at me all the time. So somebody comes and they say something horrible to me, right? Now, uh, there are different ways I can defend myself. So one way of defending myself is by expressing my real feelings, right? Which is, to say, which to say, wow, I'm really hurt by the way that you're talking to me. That, I feel like I deserve more respect than that. Right. And in which case, I might be heard. I might not be heard. Depends. But at least, right? At least I've given them the tools to be able to stop. Now, if on the other hand, they say to me something horrible and I go, "You stupid imbecile," right?
Mm.
I said, how
That's
dare
like
you talk to me that way, right? So in that case,
yeah, that's a good, really good point.
yeah, I'm not going to get what I want, right? I'm not going to, if what I want is my peace, right? If what I want is my peace, I'm not going to get my peace that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But I think even like sort of from an Abrahamic perspective, eye for an eye, um, tooth for a tooth, ear for ear. If somebody says something nasty, if you say something nasty back, I do think that's sort of forgivable because but as long as you're not doing more than giving back more than what was given to you. However, like in the Quran, it says, you know, it says we said to the children of Israel, eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, something like that. But forgiveness is better. And it says those, there's another verse which says those who repay evil with good, um, the one whom you were with, the two enemies will then become allies. So like actually, if you are able to control it with patience, and if you are able to sort of control your anger and not retaliate, and instead forgive that other person, then and love, then actually that will transform enemies into allies. And elsewhere in the Quran it says about the believers who when they get angry they forgive. So they choose to forgive. So if you've got, a situation where you can revenge, but you choose not to, you choose to have mercy, then that is an amazing thing. But I think it's a very, very, very difficult thing to do. Really, really difficult. But now I remember my second point that I was going to make before is what you said about repressing anger. I think many of us think that that's one way of controlling it, or dealing with it, is to repress it, to hold yourself back from saying anything. But unless you can really forgive that other person inside yourself, that will build up and up and up and up, and then you will explode, and you will probably end up causing more harm than anything when you finally, because if you're not actually like forgiving the other person and letting go of that anger, then you're just repressing it, you're putting it in a cage, and when you finally, if it comes out, it's just gonna it's gonna destroy everything. And I think, yeah, so that's the challenge, that's the big challenge, I think. Forgiveness,
Somebody
patience,
once said
but
that
forgiveness.
that bitterness towards somebody is like taking poison and expecting the other guy to die, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah,
Uh,
it will wreck your relationships. So, like, just because you're able to control yourself and not say anything back to somebody, if you're not letting go of the resentment and the bitterness inside, that will still affect your relationship. It will come out in other ways. You cannot, it's still poison. It's poison for yourself and it's poison for the relationship, because it will come out eventually, and it can cause a lot of destruction. So I think the only way is to really be able to learn how to forgive, when you're angry. So to be patient in that time of anger is, like you were saying, is so important. And it would be good to talk about practical ways of doing this. So I think one way is perhaps like singing, or I don't know, like, praying, remembering God, and asking Him to give you strength at that time. It's easy to forget God in those situations because, your ego gets in the way and you're feeling hurt, and it's, you stop seeing things from the other person's perspective. But I think if we can acknowledge that we're really rubbish at this as human beings, and actually ask God to help us and give us strength in that moment, I think that's, one way. Splashing water on yourself, I think, putting water on yourself can help to get rid of that energy, that negative energy, if you've got water nearby. Breathing, as you said, is, it's easy to get into that, you go into panic mode sometimes and you forget to breathe. So just taking deep breaths. I mean, I say all of this and it's so hard to do myself. But I'm going to work on this myself. And I
well,
really,
if you take long breaths,
mm,
actually so our
it does, it
physiology
calms you
is
down. It
funny,
does. Your heart
right?
rate.
It triggers your brain into thinking everything's okay. So
Mm,
it's a good way of kind of tricking your brain into thinking that the panic is over,
yeah.
right? And that way the panic, because part of it is, that fight, flight, or flee response,
Mm,
or that fight, freeze, or flee response, I mean, is is really unhelpful in human relations. Um,
mm.
and forgiveness has a huge place in this. I'll speak a little personally. I used to have a horrible horrible temper. Anybody who knows me would probably be surprised at that, because now certainly I don't. But I really had like a terrible, terrible temper, and it makes sense because I grew up around people with terrible tempers. My father and my parents fought a lot, and I internalized that. Um, I think a lot of what has solved that is, I spend a lot of time working on myself, kind of like myself, and I understand human frailty a lot better now than when I was younger. Like I understand that human beings are really they're operating as best as they can, you know?
Mm.
Um, and that I think that the way that they're operating is not um as good as it should be. Well, they're looking at me and they're thinking the same thing about me, you know? I mean, it's everybody is trying really hard, but it's not easy. It's not easy to be a human being. It's not easy. Um, and so we have a lot of failings, and I've become much more forgiving of other people's failings
Yeah,
because I've had to kind of deal with mine. And you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
you look
And
at yourself, you know,
mm, I agree. And I think it's the reason why people get angry in a situation is because they feel like at the time, that they're right and the other person's wrong. Um, but it is a little bit sort of arrogant because do we never get things wrong? We none of us are perfect. So who are we to sort of throw the first stone when, we ourselves are not perfect? And as so Jesus said that, didn't he?
but
Peace be.
not just not perfect. Also, like we have to realize that the Quran says, and actually it's in the Talmud Yerushalmi and Talmud Bavli, both of them, that a human being is a world, right? Human being is a world. And that has a lot of meaning. One of the meanings of that is that each person has a completely different way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
So let's imagine. So let's imagine that that we have a conflict. Okay, so Lee and Lale have a conflict. So there's Lee land that's over here, and there's Lale land over there. Okay, there's Lee land
Allah.
and Lale land. Now Now, which actually sounds really good, actually. Leland, La La Land. I don't know, it's a lot of L's. So in so if I wanted so if Lale is upset, okay, I need to understand what things mean in Lolly Land. So what do I have to do? So I have to cross the bridge over into Lolly Land. So so imagine here I am, I'm the guest. Okay, I'm the guest. And I come to the bridge and I say, "Excuse me, but do you mind if I come over?" And you say, "Yes, no problem. Come on over." Okay? And I leave my baggage, okay, because I'm not going to bring if I bring all my stuff over to La La Land, that could be a problem. I go into La La Land and you invite me into La La Land and you show me. Now, I don't start rearranging your furniture because that's not nice, right? I'm your guest. So I don't kind of walk around and go, "Hey, I don't like where that couch is." Okay, I don't start rearranging your inner life. But
Mm.
now, once I go to La La Land, I might understand, right, I might understand that something might make sense to me and say, well, oh, I said, well, in La La Land, this means this. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example for me. So if you came over to Leland, what you would find, right, is that people being loud, right? Yelling loudly is really horrible in Leland. Okay? In Leland, people yelling is just like not a good thing, right? It's in Leland, everything you'll see, all of a sudden the walls start crumbling, right? The pictures fall off the walls, all sorts of bad things happen. Now, probably in La La Land that may not happen, okay? But that's part of the rules. That's part of what happens in Leland, right? And you would see that and go, oh, so like when I yell all the pictures start falling off his walls. That's not good. Maybe I shouldn't do that anymore, right? So, so it's not just knowing somebody's flaws, it's just sort of knowing who they are. Like it's knowing that they're different from you. We spend so much time being mad at people for not being us. You know,
Mm.
we're mad at them because, well, why aren't you just like me? Why don't you react just like me? Because
Yeah.
I'm the center of the universe. So part of giving up your ego a little bit and being willing to see the inner life of another person and seeing that from where they
Respecting.
are, it makes sense. It doesn't mean you have to love it. Okay? It doesn't mean you have to love it. Right? You don't have to like every single thing that somebody, their emotional disposition, but at least you can say, okay, from where they're coming from, it makes sense.
It's respecting, isn't it? Respecting the other person's space, respecting that they're a different, they see things from a different perspective. They've got different experiences, triggers, and respecting the differences really, and treating them, I guess, how they want to be treated rather than how you want to
Right.
be treated in that sense. Obviously, like we all, there's a way that we should treat others how we want to be treated, which is, I think, the same. But for example, we all want to be loved, we all want to be able to show love, we want people to be kind to us, we want to be able to show kindness and all these things. But when it comes to the details, like how you should talk to somebody, a child might want you to talk to them in a way that's different to how an older person might want you to talk to them. So because they understand things in a different way. And, some people might like you to yell at them, but other people might like you to talk to them
Yeah.
in a quiet voice because maybe they're more sensitive to sound or whatever. So we've got to be able to change ourselves and in the way that we treat other people in that sense. But it is really difficult, isn't it? You can't really control how other people treat you because they can choose to treat you in a certain way. And even though you might want the respect, they might choose not to give you that respect, and their intentions might be different or whatever. That's between them and God. But what we can do is take control over our own reaction. And well, I hope we can. I still struggle with it, and
Everybody
it's
struggles with it.
sort of, yeah, it's sort of finding out ways, like practical things that we can do to try to have control over our inner beast in a way that maybe we can't get rid of it because it's there and it's part of who we are. I mean, there's references to our to God in the Bible and the Quran about being angry and stuff like this. So actually, maybe there is a holy anger that actually we can. There's a way that we can even transform anger to serve our Creator better. So as you said before, getting passionate about standing up against injustice and oppression. If we didn't have anger that fueled that passion, then perhaps it wouldn't be so good. We if we were so cool and chilled about everything, we wouldn't actually stand up against things that are wrong, against harm that's being done to our neighbors and whatever. We need to sometimes have that, I think, and that can be a good thing. And also, like, for example, I think it's okay to be angry at yourself, maybe if you lose your control, because then that can, not always, but that can help you to try to get better at, controlling it. And so maybe it's the way that we channel anger that would be more effective than trying to just get rid of it completely, and working on our forgiveness and patience and I don't know.
I thought about this thing about getting angry at yourself. We were talking about it before, and there's a line in Pirkei Avot, which is like teaching the rabbis the first century, and he says they says something like make your heart angry against yourself. But you could understand it actually, yirgzu could mean rogez means anger, but it also means like to agitate. And there is a way, I think. So there's a
Mm,
way of kind of stirring yourself up, you
mm,
know, like stirring your pot and saying, okay, I, I just did this thing and like I need to stir the pot. I need to kind of like work myself up, to be able to figure out what's going on here and to like give myself a hard time and, and work on this. And I feel like it's a little bit different than being angry at yourself because sometimes angry at yourself can mean kind of like you just kind of scold yourself, but the scolding doesn't usually do anything, right? If I just call myself bad names, right?
Well, it can get rid of your ego, though. It can help get rid of the ego, which is probably the cause of why you get angry, maybe with somebody
Yeah.
else. What
But
do you think?
then you replace it with feelings of, so you don't want to, see
Low
the thing,
self-esteem. You don't want to lose your faith in
right,
your potential and your,
right,
you don't want to doubt yourself so much by
right.
getting
You
too
don't want
angry.
to replace ego with inadequacy,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right?
That's the
So
danger of getting angry with yourself too much.
right. So right, you want to be careful because you don't want to beat yourself up, right? Because if you beat yourself up, then you just end up black and blue, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no
But
benefit
have
in
compassion on yourself as well.
right. So I think you do have to kind of stir yourself up. I think it's reasonable to stir yourself up, but I think it's reasonable to say to yourself, "Wow, you really messed that up," and to give yourself a hard time, you
Yeah, I
know.
think it is. I think it is because if you don't do that, then how can you regret your behavior and try to change? If we don't, I think we do have to get a little bit. If you're going to be angry with anybody, be angry with yourself, I think.
Yeah, but you
No?
have to, you know, uh, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said you should be happy 23 hours a day, right?
Okay, so 1 hour.
1 hour a day you
Yeah.
should devote to giving yourself a hard time, right?
Okay. I like
So,
that.
right. So set aside time and say, okay, this is my 1 hour from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm gonna beat myself up. Okay. I'm gonna go over all the things I messed up. I'm gonna look at everything I messed up. I'm gonna look at it honestly. I'm not gonna rationalize. I'm gonna give myself a hard time. Maybe I'll even call myself some bad names. Okay, you idiot. You stupid idiot. Whatever. But okay, at the end of it, because the problem is if you do that all the time, if you're carrying that around all the time, oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Then you become an idiot.
But the thing is just like we were talking about forgiveness and just how we should let go of resentment and bitterness towards other people. I think we need to that anger towards ourselves. We also need to let go of it. And I
Right.
think the way we do that is to, I guess, talk to our creator and say, I messed up. I'm really sorry. Forgive me. And I'll try harder next time. And then you can let go of that as well.
Yeah.
So and hopefully it will help you to try a bit harder. And if you mess up again, then you do it again. You say, "Oh, I've done it again," and actually this time maybe you should be even more angry with yourself.
Yeah.
And then say, "I'm really, really sorry," and then you try harder. But you have to keep trying and letting go of the anger towards yourself and also the anger towards other people. And I think the more we are able to forgive others, the more we will be able to be forgiven ourselves and let go of any resentment and anger towards ourselves, and then have more compassion on ourselves. And that's so, so important because, as you said, you don't want to doubt your potential, you don't want to doubt your worthiness. We're all worthy, we're all amazing human beings who have incredible potential to do great things. And when you doubt that, that can cause so, so much harm to yourself and your relationships as well. So it's getting that balance, isn't it? It's getting that
Yeah.
balance.
And not giving up on yourself, but also not giving up on other people.
And
You
other
know,
people, yeah, exactly.
the assumption should always be that other people can change. So you mentioned kind of talking to God. So I would say it's always good to have like a threefold to have a threefold communication system. It's good to have a communication with God. It's good to have communication with a mentor, somebody
Um,
who knows you well and somebody who knows you well and who's kind of a little bit more further along than you are and can help you. And also having real friends. It's important to have real friends, be able to talk to real friends, you know, and have friends that you can talk to and you can say, "Oh my God, you can't believe how I messed up today." You know, as you know, I interacted with so and so, and they said this, and I said that, and they said this, and I said that, and they said this, and I said that, and now I feel like I want to beat myself up, and it says I want to go beat them up, I want to slash their tires, and whatever, whatever, and to be able to let that out
Mm,
in a safe place with somebody who who knows you and loves you and cares about you, and to be able to communicate that and to be able to work it out because it's important it's important to have those things, and thank God, we have, if we have people around us who are close to us, that we can do that, and that helps it helps a lot,
yeah,
to
I
be able
agree.
to talk it out and say this is what happened,
Because we're all human, we all, most of us can relate to one another with these things. We all have, these negative emotions that are part of who we are, and we all struggle. We're all in that battle. We all, struggle with it sometimes. And actually, it's there's something so beautiful about talking about it with other people, and being empathic, and that is one way of transforming it, I think, is to know that we're in this together. And as long as our intention is to get better, and purify our hearts and our thoughts and our speech and our behavior, then we might keep falling, but we just got to keep getting back up again and trying a bit harder tomorrow.
you're not judged by how many times you fall, you're judged by how many times you get up again. That's my, you
Yeah,
know as long as you get up.
keep
So
getting
did we
up.
solve the problem? Did we answer the question?
Mm. Oh, well, I think we're trying to, and that's what matters.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. You did know, I think you shared some amazing um practical points on how we can try and control our anger and ride the beast rather than letting it kill us and others.
Okay. And if this made anybody angry, please write your comments down below. And don't
Yes,
forget
please share.
to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. And right. If you're angry, just
Okay, thank you so much for watching. Peace and blessings, and thank you, Rabbi Wiseman.
my pleasure.
Shalom. Okay, till next week, God willing.